There's a rights activist called Mutemi wa Kiama. Now, this Mutemi wa Kiama is at Mutemi wa Kiama on Twitter. And the day before yesterday, 4 days ago, he had tweeted, created a nice thread, some political education KE for you to chew on this weekend. I want to do a section on Kenyan chiefs, many of whom collaborated with the colonial government and whose children and grandchildren have ascended to positions of incredible power and wealth in Kenya. This is a history of Kenya City. I mean, we keep talking about this left, right, and center. These chiefs drew their power from association with the colonialists. They included Koinange wa Bio, Karori wa Gakure, Njiri wa Karanja, Angaine Mutoitiria, Musa Nyandusi, Kinyanjui wa Gathirimu, Muhoho wa Gadesha, Michoki Kagwe, Josiah Njonjo, Amoth Owira of Alego, and Mwendo wa Kitavi. Right? So the thread continues now and gives the history of each and the children and grandchildren and how they rose to positions of prominence in the country. Apparently, this did not go down well with some quarters because this man was picked up from his home and he was taken to a police station, and there was a lot of push and pull with this, other rights activists now going to campaign for his release. The man was eventually released. It's not yet clear exactly what feathers he had ruffled. Among the people who had gone there advocating his release is Wanjeri Nderu, who is also a human rights activist. Wanjeri Nderu is joining us on the line, and we're going to hear from Wanjeri what exactly is it that was the problem with Mutemi wa Kiama, and was it just because of the tweet, or was there something else? Was there some background information that they've been able to gather so far? Wanjeri, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, and welcome to the Situation Room.
Asante sana for having me.
So you spent your day yesterday, pushing for the release of Mwalimu Mutemi wa Kiama.
Yes, I did. Actually, the struggle began the night before when he was abducted, because that was not a legal arrest.
It was abduction.
It was an abduction.
Why do you call it an abduction?
They did not have an arrest warrant. They did not have a search warrant. They went banging on his door at 8 p.m. at night, like he was this robber or Al-Shabaab or something to that effect, and insisted that he has to go with them. And he decided to go on Facebook Live, and he tagged some of us, and he demanded for them to show the arrest warrant, or to tell him at least the reason for why they're coming to pick him up, because they did identify themselves as DCI officers.
Yep.
So he asked them to put the arrest warrant or search warrant or whatever document, the legal document they had, under the door, so that he can read it and open the door for them. But what they did is they took like a metal rod, and using their sticks and the rod, they broke in and took him. All this was captured live on Facebook. And they grabbed his phone off him, switched it off. They handcuffed him, the back of his, put the hands on his back and handcuffed him very tight. He actually has wounds to show from the injuries from the handcuffs. Put him in this Subaru and sandwiched him in there. 5 people. There were 5 in total in the vehicle. And, started the usual drive around. So for a few hours, we didn't know where he was. Until when I started the hashtag Release Kiama, and many more people came on board and realized that something was happening, and we started the noise online, is when eventually we got information that he was at Capitol Hill police station. That's where he eventually ended up. But at first they had taken him to Nairobi area. That's where they held him for a while. And then they took him to Capitol Hill police station, where now we went, 5 of us, me and a few other comrades, including the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders Director, Commander Musheke from Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, Boniface Mwangi, and another colleague. And we ended up there, we left there maybe about midnight after having at least given him some food and some warm clothes. But by that time we were leaving him, they still hadn't told him what his crime was. And he kept asking, why did you arrest me? Why did you take me from my house forcefully and you haven't told me what it is you've taken me for?
Maybe Wanjeri, before actually, let me just interrupt you here. Before we continue any further, for the benefit of everybody who's listening, just introduce us to Mutemi Wakema. We're trying to reach him, and unfortunately, he's not come online yet. But just introduce us to Mutemi Wakema. Who is he? What does he do?
Right. Mutemi Wakema is a human rights activist who uses social media to agitate for change. So he's very vocal about matters governance. He's very passionate about the history of this country, the true history of this country. He's also very passionate about educating the masses about what their rights are. And he does this through his online platforms, which is Facebook, Twitter, and he also has a platform called Wanjeri Revolution on Facebook and Wanjeri Revolt on Twitter, which were actually banned for a while. They just gave him back the platform some time back. And his personal handles are Mutemi Wakema on Facebook and on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
he's one of us as a human rights activist who use social media, as a tool.
A platform to advocate and educate people.
Yes. Yeah.
So he did this thread 4 days ago.
Yes.
On chiefs. And there's this, thinking that maybe this is what landed him in problems. But then you're saying that throughout, when he was asking, why did you arrest me? He was not receiving any sort of answer.
No, they were not telling him why they took him.
So up to now, you don't know whether it's because of this thread or anything else.
Actually, we kind of suspect it was because of that thread, because he could overhear them talking and saying, like communicating with someone. In fact, first of all, when they got into his house, they took pictures of him, and they were forwarding these pictures via WhatsApp to someone who was giving them orders. And so these officers were acting, as they were going along, they were communicating with somebody. And they kept saying, apana unajua hizi vitu wanaweka kwa social media. But if you look at the charge sheet, the summary of the charge sheet in court, which was actually thrown out, is he's using social media to influence and mislead Kenyans. What kind of a charge is that? Now, we have gone through his TL, as when they took him, he went through his timeline on Facebook and Twitter to look at whatever it is he's done that could be controversial. But the only thing that you can classify that as controversial was whatever he posted, which is actually fact. In fact, those things can be found at the National Archives. If you go to the National Archives and look for that information, it's there. It's outside in the public domain. It's just that the public hardly ever accesses or knows where to get this information from. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing him trying to call me. You might want to call him now, maybe, because he's...
Okay, we'll do that. John, just try and call Mutemi now. Okay, John. So John is trying to call him as we continue this conversation. So he spent an entire day now going back and forth and getting him released. And the what you're hearing from the authorities and what you're seeing on the charge sheet is that he's using social media to incite.
Not incite. Influence.
Yes, to influence and
mislead.
Yes.
So when he was taken in the morning, after they removed him from Capitol Hill and brought him back to Nairobi area police station, where they were said they're going to have him do a statement and take his fingerprints. We were there for more than 4 hours. They didn't take the statement, neither did they take his fingerprints. Then they uprooted him and took him to Milimani court after coming up with this weird charge sheet. Milimani DPP, they looked at it and the courts were like, this is rubbish. We're not going to have this in our courtroom. And it was kicked out. So as the lawyers were still inside there finishing with the process, I was outside the court with him. These same officers came and picked him up, and put him in this vehicle. And I'm asking them, where are you taking him? And they're like, we're taking him back to Nairobi area, after they realized the case is not going to be taken up by Milimani.
Yeah.
So they took him, we followed them to Nairobi area, we asked them to produce Mutemi, they couldn't. So what they did is they took him, put him in a different Subaru car. It was like a movie, literally. The kind of wastage of our resources these officers, do to harass citizens is incredible. So they had the cars standing on standby so that they can switch in between. So we insisted on him being produced at Nairobi area. We were there for another 2 hours. Then they said, no, we've taken him to Kibera to court. So we all rushed again to Kibera. This time the number of people with us were more. And at least we had Martha Taroa there representing him, Haron Dubi. So we had proper lawyers with us. We rushed back to Kibera. Getting to Kibera, he was not in Kibera. We spent about 40 minutes in Kibera waiting for him. Then they said, no, they haven't brought him, so he's back in Nairobi area. We drove back again, the entire team, to Nairobi area. Getting to Nairobi area, we insisted that we need to know where he has been taken. And we had left some activists at Kibera to scout for him because we knew they were trying to separate us so that they can start a court process without him having representation. That was actually their intention. And the activists at Kibera called us after we had left and said Mutemi wa Kiama had just been brought in. Right? So they put him in the parking lot and now try to organize the court quickly so that they can start this process. We are at Nairobi area. Nobody is representing him. He's alone with cops and the judicial officers at Kibera.
It sounds like a very tiring job to do just because somebody has posted something on Twitter. Actually, Mutemi wa Kiama is now on the line. Mutemi, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, Mutemi. Pole sana for the ordeal that you underwent.
I guess it goes with the territory. When you criticize this government nowadays, as everybody is seeing, it seems that they don't want any dissenting voices.
So you've already actually labeled yourself. You criticize the government.
Yes, I do.
This is like what you do for a living.
No, not necessarily for a living, because I don't get paid.
I know.
It's actually very paid.
I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm just being facetious. This is you do this passionately. You point out issues and areas of government that you want to highlight on your platforms. So in this particular thread that you wrote was about chiefs, the colonial era chiefs, and their descendants. But before this, Mutemi, had you run into trouble with the government on other occasions, and what about?
Mostly what I've had are threats, usually from people, either calls or on inboxes and that kind of thing. So from maybe operatives or from supporters, and not the kind of thing that happened the last 2 days. That was the first time. Yeah.
What we're looking at these occurrences of yesterday and the day before. What, at the top of your mind, do you think was the reason for all of this? This taking you from your home and the whole circus that happened after that. On the top of your mind, what do you think the reason was?
So the blatant impunity points towards. So we've been telling Kenyans that this government disappears people, picks up people and people disappear. Remember from way back, Bogonko Bosire, then there was Morioki, who used to work at State House around the ICC cases and that kind of thing. But people have not been paying attention to this. And these guys, what they do is they pick you up and you disappear and you're never seen again. And the impunity, even into breaking into my house without a warrant, a search warrant or a warrant of arrest, points to that kind of impunity. And just the fact that they can do it. So the fact that I got it on video most probably is what changed the whole thing. Otherwise, maybe nobody would have known what would have happened to me. So, yeah. That's what I think.
And because I'm listening to, Wanjeri and what she's been saying and how they, basically, because this is what it was. They were following you everywhere that they took you. Now, when you were alone with them, did you have any kind of conversation to hear? I mean, I know you were asking at some point, from what we've been told, why have you arrested me? Why? What is the reason? I'm still looking to see if they said anything to you directly as to why they had put you in this position.
Until that point where I've just had Wanjeri describe the drama at Milimani Court when they spirited me away from my lawyers. and then went and switched cars, then started playing hide and seek, went to Kilimani police station instead of Kibra, and then waited. I think so. All that time, at that particular moment, is when they told me it was they gave me told me what I'm being charged with, and there's a book that was written by Professor Peter Kagwanja about Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. And they said, so I did a tweet about it. I did a screenshot of the cover and questioned that legacy. And then what happened is that, as Kenyans on Twitter will do, someone picked up the image and changed the title, to, I don't know, My Life After Crime or something like that. I think there were like three different people changed the title to three different things, because just to reflect what they feel is the real legacy of the current president. And they told me that was why I was being, whether did you do that? And that's why you're being charged. Although I think that was just a distraction anyway. It was just like a by the way, because all I got along from the time I was abducted from my house to that time was that these guys did not really know what to charge me with. They kept asking me, "Who are you?" Because they were getting instructions all the time, just calls from somewhere. Someone is calling, Like, interestingly, even after they switched the cars, the Subarus at Nairobi area, and went and parked at Kilimani police station, parking whatever the parking lot there. They kept getting, that guy got like 20 calls. Every time you'd get out of the car, take the call, come back.
So essentially there was somebody giving them instructions every part of that journey. Yeah,
all through. In fact, when we went to Kibra, we parked for about half an hour outside the court, somewhere outside the court, just before the court. And even the Subaru that, I don't know whether Wanjeri mentioned this, that came to block Honorable Mother Karoa's car when she was coming out to the court.
I was getting there.
There's a Subaru that came. It came and drove very slowly in front of her car. We saw it pass. I saw it pass. There was I don't know what kind of coordination that was. It was like those were three Subarus that were coordinating in terms of just getting me to court. It was so much drama.
So
I was actually laughing at some point.
So what they did actually is when we were approaching Kibra, when we left Nairobi area, when we were approaching the Kibra locals going back after we were informed by the activists that you had been taken back there, one of the Subarus that were following you, or whatever we can call the lineup of Subarus that you had with you, came in front of the car that was carrying your lawyer Haron Jobi and Martha Karua, and they were driving very slowly to block them from getting to Kibra. At this point, the court started. Okay, so we were the first. Me, Florence, an activist, and another lady were the first people to get to Crater Loop. We were the first ones to get to Kibra Law Court. We rushed into court, and we stood up in court and said, "We need to stop these proceedings because the lawyers are not here." That's when we barged into court, and the magistrate was shocked because we are not lawyers. We're just random citizens standing up in his court demanding things must stop until your lawyers get there. Then Haron Jobi realized what the Subaru was doing. So he got out of the car and ran to Kibera. Because the car could not get to the law court in time. That's what
and good time.
And he was shaking.
It was just a lot of drama back and forth. And it sounds to me, when I listen to all this, and even hearing that the police officers were receiving instructions from somebody who's not there. Well, this is not how the police operate. If you've been arrested and you're to be taken to court, it's very clear. You're arrested, the charges are ready, you're taken to court. It sounds to me like it was just one of those, trying to teach you a lesson or something, just to get you somewhere. It may not also be that the officers were actually acting under the instructions of a senior police officer. Maybe not even.
It's possible. It's not even a senior police officer, because even like when they took an inventory of my stuff, so once they came and abducted me, and I guess I realized that the video that I did was live on Facebook. Something changed. A call came through and something changed. So they had grabbed my stuff and we were leaving. All of a sudden, we came back into the living room, and then everything, the gadget, computers and what were removed from the bag and put on the table, and someone started taking an inventory, including serial numbers, pictures, and that kind of thing, and forwarding them to somebody. So that whole that video changed everything. So that's why I believe the initial intention was insidious until they realized that these have been captured on live video.
So how did, because obviously you were out. How did this day end from getting to court, and then what was the resolution at the end of it? And I ask this because then, is this something that is continuing, or was everything dropped and nobody's speaking of it again? Or are we still in a process of seeing something else going on, Mutemi?
So the ODPP dropped the charges. Actually, they laughed off the charges. They said, there's nothing here to charge him with. And of course, it was on live video. They broke into my house. I need that. I need remedy for that. Then the violations. The arrest without being told what people are identifying themselves or telling me what it is they're arresting me for. And the runaround, the psychological torture. I mean, these are constitutional, matters in terms of rights of a citizen, in terms of what am I entitled to. So I'm going to consult with my lawyers, and then we see what course of action to take. We're not going to let this go, and we can't afford. This is part of a wider thing. It's an illustration of what personally I've been saying, Wanjeri and other activists, that. For the last 7 years, that we are nurturing what we call a python that is constricting us. And now I think the python has come of age, and the python is Uhuru Kenyatta. And Kenyans need to. When my dad called me yesterday, my dad voted for Uhuru Kenyatta, I think, all those 3 times. I come from Kirinyaga, and most of central Kenya has been behind him. And my dad told me, that guy is a dictator. Just be careful, but continue doing what you're doing. We can't let him take us back to the 1950s.
So here you are, Mutemi. You've been released. You went back and spent. I hope you had a good sleep at least. Didn't have nightmares at night. Now you're up. You're okay. You're saying you're going to be consulting with your lawyers to see the next course of action. What is it that you're considering? What among what options do you have?
Legal action. It's going to be legal action, seeking compensation for that, but also ensuring that we get to the bottom of what was behind this, who was behind it. For example, if it was even the matter of that cover that I'm alleged to have altered the title. Yeah. That is a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. It will be someone, either the publisher or the owner of the book, ideally would sue me. So it's to get to the bottom of this matter and ensure that this does not happen to another Kenyan. Yes. I want
to turn this story around a bit, all right, and look at it from the other side. There are those that accuse very many of the likes of you, Mutemi, Kiama, Wanjeri, Nderu, and the others, who are open critics of the government, as being what politicians have often referred to as evil society. The members of the evil society, whose only agenda is to try and disparage and smear mud on President Uhuru Kenyatta, his deputy William Ruto, starting from the point that there are those in the civil society who do not believe that they should have vied as president. Then even after they've taken over power, there are still people in the civil society, the evil society, as you're called, who still want to try and bring him down from whatever corner that you get. And this, you find every opportunity to poke your spear into their ribs. This particular one, you've been arrested. You don't even know whether it's the president who has ordered the arrest. But the message that you're bringing out here is we have been rearing a dragon, and now the dragon in the shape of Uhuru Kenyatta is coming to deal with us.
Maybe I can give you a little bit historical context on where the name Evil Society comes from. Right? During the ICC cases, which of course, us as activists or whoever is in the civil society sector, We are not the ones who came up with the evidence or even whatever. Personally, as Wanjeri, I do this as an individual. I am not attached to any organization in any way or form, right?
Same here.
And they did a campaign, and also Mutemi, and they did a campaign to label anybody who was talking about issues to do with corruption, the mass murder of Kenyans and things like that as evil society. It was an actual campaign to get the public to defend people who had already been labeled criminals. Now, the ICC did their part and the case went as it did. If you look at Chapter 6 of our Constitution, Eric, those people should not hide. But this being Kenya, they did. Now, we have no control over that, but I, as an individual, what is my responsibility to myself, my children, my country? My responsibility is to point out when I see something is going wrong. If I see corruption happening, I will point it out. Whether they call us society or not, we need to have individuals out there and even organizations that are standing up and saying this is wrong. Unfortunately, our civil society movement is dead. So even as much as they're calling people evil society, it is a dead space right now. The vibrancy that they had, the presence that we saw in the 90s, and coming back, even from the time of the multi-party democracy.
How do you come to the conclusion that the civil society is dead?
I have, because I can see it. The people who should be rising up and saying what is happening is wrong are silent. So it is being left to individuals like us who are also being targeted for speaking out.
Who are these people that are silent?
Well, most civil society organizations that are organized, properly organized, and have the capacity to be able to drive the conversation about where the country should be led are silent. Okay? I am not going to mention names on air. They know themselves. We have spread the information that we are on air right now. Some of them are listening. They know themselves. And it is time that they also stood and backed us as individuals and also used whatever resources they had to educate the public.
Wanjeri, if you can actually speak about the government, and this is what the government is doing and it's going wrong, just call out your fellow civil society organizers.
But she's just done it.
Say the organizations that you feel are letting the movement of keeping government to accountable. Just call them out. Say this particular organization, by my own understanding, it used to be active in this manner before Uhuru, and after Uhuru, it has not come out to raise issues. Why wouldn't you mention them?
Uhuru, Eric, this is something that the civil society space has been going downhill for even before Uhuru Kenyatta. In fact, from the time of Kibaki, when Kibaki got into power and appointed people who are supposed to, play an oversight role into his government.
Yep.
That's where it started going down. And to me, that was a very deliberate move because he did not want criticism at the time that, he was in power. And being a president, you can understand them doing things like that to be able to protect themselves. But the reason I am saying that we cannot all be labeled evil society just because the government has called us so is because I am giving another example of what has happened to Mutemi. Happened to Mildred Ati Owiso. She was removed from her house. Yes, because we were speaking about corruption in Nairobi County. And we have politicians who do what? Who use cops as individual mercenaries. Okay? We were summoned by the EACC. EACC is asking us, where did you get this information that you're posting online from? I'm like, but this is a public document. The Auditor General has said we have lost over 2.3 billion shillings in the last 2 years in Nairobi County. So as an activist, it is my duty to inform the public that this information that you, the media, and even other media spaces are not putting as headlines, this information exists. Why it's not in the public domain, I do not know, but here it is. And we used our platform to talk about it. The next thing we know, tunatafutwa. We are getting press.
and maybe we need to demystify what an activist is.
Yes.
Because
as you do that, Mutemi, maybe you can join to this in this case. And the question is then, if we go back to what Wanjeri said a few minutes ago, that people have gone silent. As you describe what an activist is and what they do, maybe you can shed some light then as to why civil society or the majority then actually have gone silent over the years.
So, just to go back to the evil society narrative, as Wanjeri described, that was a campaign. It was, first of all, to get people elected to office who ideally would never have been elected because of the crimes they had been accused of. Remember the narrative of guilty until proven, until you exhaust the option of appeal.
Yes.
That was something that came up around 2012. It had never been there. Because if you're accused of, and some civil society organizations went to court and they were slapped with costs. They lost the case and they were slapped with crazy costs. Some organizations were being charged costs of 100 million. So this kind of scared some of the members of I mean, if you have an organization and you fundraise to advocate for Kenyans, then you go to court on behalf of Kenyans, and then you're slapped with a punitive court cost of 100 million, which very few donors, if you're a donor-funded organization, are going to pay. So some of those organizations have been suffering for the last 7-8 years because of that. Eventually, they appealed, and those costs were overturned. But by then, it took I think like around 5 to 6 years. It had totally crippled the organizations. This was something that was done very deliberately. The narrative of ICC. If you go to my posts around 2013, I talked about Cambridge Analytica. We didn't know then it was known as Cambridge Analytica because they came here with a different name. BTP advisors. We advise people that the vitriol that you're seeing online, is being driven by a British PR company.
Well organized, well orchestrated.
It's well organized and well orchestrated. Buying media space, and a lot of people got into this very innocently. That in terms of even buying into that evil society narrative. Remember, let me even give you a bit of more background. What had happened is that there was an attempt to have a local tribunal on these cases that went to the ICC. The PV, an inquiry into the PV and the suspects.
Yeah.
These guys did not want that to happen. They thought if this process becomes international, it should never happen, or it should take forever.
Yeah.
So they said, there was a famous phrase. Yeah, don't be vague. Let's go to Hague. And that is the narrative that BTP came to drive through social media, using accounts of prominent people who are prominent right now who work for the states. I think you know their name. I don't want to mention their name on air. And they drove that narrative, and that the civil society is the one that is taking Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto to the ICC. And so that is what built that evil society narrative. And of course, because of the communication budgets of the government and behind this campaign, the Jubilee campaign and all that, civil society were drowned. So that's one thing.
Beaten at your own game.
I used to tell them that civil society used to be digital and government analog. In 2012, the government
went into that space and played it very well.
Yeah.
Before, and this is what Wanjeri was saying, before the Kibaki administration, we had very vibrant civil society in the country. Looking at the late 80s and throughout the 90s, the civil society was really, really active.
And what issues were they championing then?
Democracy, openness, these freedoms that we are enjoying now. That's what they were championing.
And we got those freedoms.
We still haven't enjoyed all the freedoms. Now, if we got the freedoms, then why is Mutemi being arrested?
Let me ask the question.
So let me just. So I was going to define what an activist is. An activist basically is someone who asks questions. Why things are not the way they should be. So like if I'm walking outside my neighborhood and there's a pothole. In fact, outside my neighborhood there's a pothole. I know that there are people who maintain the road.
Yep.
I know that there's the Nairobi City Council, City County is responsible for that. I know that we do have an MCA in the ward that I live in. We have MPs who are elected. As a citizen, it's my right to ask why isn't this being attended to? And right now, if I went to, I went and bought concrete or tarmac and went and repaired that pothole, I'd actually be arrested because it's against the city bylaws.
Yep.
Because the people who are responsible for that.
Yep.
So if I ask why the people who are responsible for that and Kenyans are paying taxes, even the hawker who's the mamamboga, the person who's hawking stuff in the streets, is being taxed every day to take care of such things. If they are not happening, then it's my right as a Kenyan citizen. We have rights, freedoms, and responsibilities. We don't talk about
that's an activist. Yes, it's an active citizen.
Yeah,
it's others actually call themselves.
I'm
an active citizen.
Yes, active citizen. And ideally, just let me finish this thought. Ideally, every Kenyan should be an activist. That is my what I hold. Every Kenyan who should ask questions as to why. In fact, if every Kenyan was an activist, then we'd not have the kind of problems we have in this country. I remember in 2013.
I guess where the conversation then.
So I'm taking you to the civil society.
Yes.
So I'm
and
heading
the
there.
approach.
So,
if your approach, Wanjeri, is to go Mutemi is to go onto social media and raise the issues, the language they use and the language that somebody else uses, that could be the difference in approach. If I choose to bring the neighbors together and I say, let's go to the chief or let's go to the MCA or let's go to City Hall and advocate for this road to be repaired, and a different approach of let's go and smear City Hall with feces, it's a different approach.
So that's different activists, different approaches,
yes.
and you're saying different tactics. Mostly what we do, Wanjeri and I, is that we raise consciousness around the issue, then other people take it up. Some of the time we take these things up, we organize, we bring citizens together, we petition, we go for a protest and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that is something every Kenyan should be doing. So now going to civil society, what is civil society? Civil society is any space between that is not government and it is not business. Anytime people organize themselves to achieve a certain end, then they become civil society. For example, Kiama is a civil society organization. As a union, a labor union, that is a civil society organization.
Residents associations.
Residents associations, that's a civil society organization. Only that, in fact, what Kenyans perceive to be civil society is NGOs. And NGOs are just one aspect of civil society, actually. If you belong in Spice Radio, you have an association where you guys come together for your own welfare. That's a civil society organization, whatever you call it, whether it's an association or even a Kiama, just to investment club. It's a civil society organization and it's governed by certain laws, the Public Benefit Organization Act, which was passed.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, sir.
When you posted the information, very rightly so and very correct in its content, on Facebook or wherever you posted it, what did you hope to achieve?
So I'm coming to that. And so once you understand the space, what civil society space does, and what an activist does, part of it is education, because it's attitude change. We've come from a colonial space where you don't question those in authority. We've passed a new constitution that tells us you have to participate, public participation. And to participate effectively, you need to understand what it is you're dealing with.
When you say colonial space, I thought we got our independence in 1963.
Actually, tell me, why don't you answer the question now directly?
What did I think?
What did you hope to achieve?
We do political education so that people can connect the state, the poverty we are in, the lack of health care, the lack of good education, the lack of that, to the systemic issues that occur within our society, our civil society. So you're saying civil society is anything that is not organized as business or government, is that space in there. And so what has happened is that, as Wanjeri said, part of guys retired. There was a transition into either government or into retirement. And there was no handover. So Kibaki gave us 10 years of relative, freedom of people. People were able to express their freedoms, to protest against the government and all that. So there was lethargy and there was people were relaxed.
What were you trying to achieve, Mr. Mutemi?
Political education. And political education is when Kenyans can connect the dots. You see, you're suffering because of X, Y, Z. There are people who are organized against you as citizens.
Okay.
Is that a direct enough answer? And these people have something.
So essentially, you want to provide civic education.
No. Political education. Civic education and political education are very different. Civic education tells you this is what the Constitution says, Chapter 6 says this, blah, 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 and you have these rights. Political education tells you this is what the Constitution says, and when you elect someone as an MP or as a president, they can easily decide, because they own X and that company, to give contracts to their company so they can make money. Now that's political education. It's waking people up. It's connecting those. You're poor because so-and-so decided to give the contract to his family.
So it's giving context to the politics and the life.
If you use the word waking up, would you then blame someone if they said that you were inciting?
I would not blame them because they don't want Kenyans to wake up. But that's what we do with Wanjeri and others. We wake people up, so that they know. And the more people take responsibility of holding government. I used to tell Jubilee guys in 2030, being a Kikuyu, I used to be bashed even by I've been removed from family or subgroups that I created myself because of being critical of Uhuru Kenyatta. And I used to tell them, if you guys did your job as members of Jubilee to ensure that the people you elect to become MPs, MCA are serving
what
you.
they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I would not be an activist. Raila Odinga then, I used to be called a Raila man. So Raila Odinga would retire and go to the Maldives and enjoy the sun. I mean, the man is 70-something. I mean, he's tired of it. So, at that time, right now I have issues with him. I didn't expect him to handshake with Uhuru. So I've beef with him on that. Although I still respect his contribution to our freedoms. We do have freedoms, which are the ones that are being clawed back.
So if I want to get back to Wanjeri and
just to add on to something that Mutemi said.
Yes.
The so-called evil society would not exist if the government was doing what it's supposed to do.
Exactly.
If they were not stealing all our money, literally, we would not be having donors coming into this country to boost our education system, our healthcare system. The drugs that we have in our in our public hospitals are funded drugs.
Yep.
The education reform that is happening.
The education reform, exactly. Everything that seems to have some semblance of working, even if it is not working perfectly, it is all donor-driven. The government is the biggest recipient of donor funding. Why not? Because the money that we are giving them through our taxes is being shipped abroad into private accounts. Now, when the Kenyans...
They are donating to other countries.
About political education. We need to get Kenyans to a point where they connect. Why am I having to have private solutions to public problems? Why do I have to have a private guarding my home? Because we do not have security, because our security system doesn't work. Our own cops are the thugs. You got to... If the government was doing what it's supposed to do, if the government was accountable, if the government was not, destroying even independent autonomous institutions, like look at what is happening with the Auditor General's office. After Ouko revealing to Kenyans how much money has disappeared, that space has now been left vacant because the government doesn't want to know how much money, doesn't want the people to know how much money they're stealing. I mean, how much money is enough for one person? When the Auditor General tells us 600 billion in Kenya shillings is stolen annually.
Is unaccounted for.
Is stolen annually, and now here we are hearing that they're borrowing 80 billion. The money they're stealing is less than what they're borrowing.
What they need to borrow.
Can I explain?
Let me ask this question, because we are coming to we have done the billion story. As we're coming to the conclusion of the talk, Wanjeri, when you said that what you feel now is the hitherto large civil society organizations have now become silenced by the system. Are you saying that there's space for new entrants into the system, into the space, and that's what you are coming to occupy? Are you saying that they did not have a strong enough backbone to stay the cause?
No, it is not that they did not have a backbone. The civil society organizations that you're referring to are basically the NGOs, right? Because you've been given a description of what civil society really is. Now, what you're targeting, what you're talking about is the NGO space.
Yeah.
Now, the kind of attacks that this space and individuals within that space, and you know what happens with our government is when they come after you as an individual. And when they come after you as an individual, they come after you as an individual and your organization as an organization. See what they did with they removed over 800 NGOs from the NGO roster, claiming they're British NGOs and things like that. That was an attack against the NGO space. Now, the kind of resources the government has compared to the kind of resources the NGO space has, you cannot compare. It's like comparing trying to poop with an elephant. You can't. You know, they have the muscle to be able to destroy somebody. So they come after you individually and your organization individually. They cripple you. When they cripple you, all you're left to do, and that's the space that the government is putting us at. They want to keep us surviving to breathe, surviving to wake up every day and
do you blame them?
Every day, you know. So the
Wanjeri, do you know of any country on this planet where individuals are free and allowed to simply criticize the government as they see fit without consequences?
Willy-nilly.
Many countries.
Like which ones?
If you look just look at Europe, yeah? Just look at Europe, where right now, which countries are thriving in Europe. Mostly it's the Scandinavian countries. The Scandinavian countries have the best welfare, citizen welfare. And they've gotten there because of activists have stood up, got into politics, have laws passed that ensure that every citizen is taken care of. Active citizens.
Was that without any pushback from the government?
Pushback is expected. We're not saying we don't, pushback is always there, but it's not the kind of thing I want to do. You know, not being abducted, house broken into, being taken around, put in cells, being taken around in that kind of drama, wasting fuel. So at some point, they were like, I was asking them, like, who's paying for all this? They're like, you know. So I wanted to explain before this show ends. I want to say, I want Kenyans who are listening to understand what a billion is, because we've $1 billion shillings, what it involves, it entails. If you spend 10,000 shillings a day, it will take you 273 years to finish 1 billion shillings. 273 years. So when you people, you know, some of these figures Kenyans cannot even relate to you know.
Do you think with the understanding, I mean, I know that, do you think with the understanding of this by Kenyans, because I think the first step that you're taking with, you know, a lot of the things that you say openly, a lot of the activism that we see then appearing on new forms of media like social media, the first step then is understanding of what the situation is, if that's where we are going. What then would what then would break the camel's back to say that more people then are going to be involved in this movement, whether silently or otherwise?
My dear, if most Kenyans earn 10,000 shillings a month, so you can imagine if 1 billion shillings, you can spend 10,000 a day for 273 years. You die, your kids take over.
I understand that, but what I'm saying now is what you're saying, because I think the frustration here is that there's a lot of silence around, you know, agitation. And I understand that. And I'm saying that it's going to take something special for things to boil over and people to say we're also part of this and we can't take this anymore. I understand the numbers and all of that. But what then is it going to take then when people in this country have passed that point of now understanding and get to the doing?
They need Kenyans need to okay. So Wanjeri, take this. Take it.
Sorry. For me, you know, change is a process. It is not something that's overnight. We have been in this country where we are always on a constant state of politicking. We are not allowed as citizens to even engage with issues because the government expects us of keeping us on toes with only political issues. Okay. Now, we and the Mamamboga, for instance, what we will be discussing, if they don't come up with they'll come up with referendum. The next thing, we are always in that constant: who is in power, who's going to be removed, who's going to come in. They never give Kenyans an opportunity to engage with what is where our real problems are. And our problems are we do not have food on our table. Now, this corona thing, I'm thinking and I'm seeing it bringing a certain form of attitude among Kenyans when they've realized these people are really not our saviors. We are on our own. We are on a lockdown. We cannot feed our kids. We are not being given a solution for this lockdown. The government is unable to feed us, but they want us to stay home and stay alive.
The government is actually leveraging Corona to get donor funds because it's broke,
Yeah.
So Kenyans are becoming aware slowly. And I saw this when we planned the process Stop These Thieves in 2018. And we did this online and we said, guys, these people have become too much. Let's go to the street. And when we went to the street, and this is citizen-led, we did not have a single coin from donors. Okay? We actually contributed to even buy our own T-shirts. If you wanted a T-shirt, bought it yourself for 300 shillings. And we met at Uhuru Park. And what that day showed me is we had 7 different counties participating and protesting simultaneously. That for me is the first time I have seen something like that is citizen-led, and we did it using social media.
So there is hope.
Now,
Wanjeri and Mutemi, I want to thank you very much. Our time is up. We've come to the end of the show. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Wanjeri Nderu and Mutemi wa Kiama. Thank you very much, human rights.
Thank you for highlighting this issue and educating your listeners further.
Thank you.
We will
Thank
invite
you to you
again
both.
to have this conversation because this is an unending conversation.
yeah.
Anytime. I'm ready to come back. Actually, we can now come back and do some more political education.
All right.
I
Post-COVID.
really appreciate
What you are doing
Thank
is definitely commendable, and thank you for making the time.
Asanteni sana.
Thank
Have a
you to
good
you
day.
both.
Yep. So it's not just about activism. It's about like Mutemi is saying. It's about making sure that citizens are woke.